Welcome to another episode of Under the Strap. I'm your host, John Rathouz, and we've got Reynolds Robinson on the podcast today, Caddy for Joseph Bramlett. Reynolds has a fascinating journey. The son of a New York City firefighter, he didn't even touch a golf club until he was nearly 30. A successful businessman for 15 years, he traded skyscrapers for golf courses and hasn't looked back. There's lots of classic Korn Ferry Tour and PGA Tour name drops in our conversation, and I could hardly believe the world-famous rapper he used to hang out with as a kid. From looping for Tiger's niece to his current Stanford Cardinal, Reynolds has made his mark on tour as a straight shooter, hard worker, and friendly guy. So pour yourself a Manhattan in his honor and enjoy. This Under the Strap podcast is presented by Thera. If your muscles are sore or tight, help them relax with the Thera Theragun. The number one massaging tool on the market and incredibly easy to use, the Theragun is designed to help you play longer and get more out of your body. So do what caddies and players on tour do and treat your muscles. Go to therabody.com/caddy, CADDIE, to get your Theragun today, starting at just $199. Now it's time for another episode of Under the Strap. Excited to have Reynolds Robinson on the podcast today. He's caddy for Joseph Bramlett. And the last time you and I talked, Reynolds, was at Topgolf. You bought me a Manhattan, and it's, that's a pretty ideal night on the road.
Yeah, no doubt.
Well, I want to have you on. I want to get to know you a little bit better. I want to find out a little bit about your background. Where did you grow up, and how did you get into the game of golf?
Man, I am a New Yorker at heart. I grew up in New York, and I'm still in New York in my heart, man, although I live in Florida right now. I'll try not to be long-winded, but what I tell people is I had the best of both worlds, John. I was born in the city and lived in the Bronx, about 10 blocks from Yankee Stadium. So I could walk to Yankee Stadium every day. Had no interest in baseball, but I went down there to hoop outside the stadium. My dad was a New York City firefighter, so we had to maintain a residence within the 5 boroughs. But my parents also had a summer home in Long Island. And when I was about 9 or 10, so third grade-ish, somewhere there, my mom told my dad, the last 2 kids that were at home, like, I'm not raising them in the Bronx. So they opened the summer home up in Long Island full time, and she took me and my sister out there to go to school. So I spent my youth between both places. So like for the first year or two, we went to Long Island, went to school Monday to Friday, and on Friday when we were done, Mom drove us back into the city, and we spent the weekends in the city. So that was like a 1 or 2 year flow until we got comfortable being out in Long Island full time. And then from there, spent most of our time in Long Island, but still spent quite a bit of time in the city. So
that's incredible. So like about what era are we talking about here?
I was born in 70, so we were talking in the 80s and 90s era. So we're talking for New Yorkers that might know, Mayor Koch. So we're back to Mayor Koch in the early Donald Trump days with Leona Helmsley, like that whole era right there. Rudy Giuliani was just like a district attorney in New York at that point in time. So we're talking 80s, 90s.
And what was that like having a dad that was a firefighter growing up?
Man, it was awesome because he was a captain at a station in Queens close to LaGuardia Airport. So I got to go to the fire station a lot. As any kid would want to do, I wanted to slide down the pole every single time. I went to the fire station just to see the fraternal order of the fire station. The guys had beds and barracks and lockers. There was a weight room. I mean, there was a kitchen, a lounge room. It was just like a big family, and it was kind of exciting because my father was sort of the lead to that family, if you will, because he was a captain on duty at that station. But I mean, I always tell people my father was not a firefighter by trade. He was a firefighter by spirit. That's who he was, not just what he did. Like he was 100% New York City firefighter, whether he had the uniform on or off. So
that's really cool. That's an incredible fraternity, and it makes a lot of sense that you're kind of part of this caddy fraternity. I'm not comparing caddying to firefighting, but you saw your dad kind of leading people at a young age and having a crew that he was hanging out with and stuff. So when you went out to Long Island, is that when you kind of started to see golf a little bit?
Dude, I didn't get interested in golf until I was almost 30 years old. I was 28
Wow.
by the time I got interested in golf. I always thought golf was for the nerds that couldn't make any other team at the school, because at my high school, that's who played golf. Math club, chess club, the guys that couldn't make the hoops team or baseball or soccer or anything else, they played golf. So I didn't have a great view of golf growing up. A buddy of mine got me interested when I was about 28. He was like, "Man, you ought to try it, dude." Like, I was like, "Man, that's a golf. That's for suckers, man. I'm not playing golf." But he slowly got me interested. I picked up some clubs from Play It Again Sports in
Yeah.
Phoenix, and I started going to the range. And then I was like, "Dag, okay, there is something to this golf thing." It was frustrating, but it was totally me. Like, I could totally improve or get worse. It was all dependent on what I did. So then I started going out to play, and I was in. I was 100% in at that point.
Yeah, so I mean, like people, a lot of athletes, they try to take on golf, and it's like can be a frustrating thing, but you can see improvement too. So, I mean, you mentioned hoops growing up. Is that kind of mainly what you're doing, or were you playing all the sports?
Now, I played everything up until about maybe eighth grade, and I was actually, people won't know it from my height, but I was actually pretty good. And actually, in my junior and senior years, I was all league, all county, all state. You remember the name Tom Gugliotta? Played for the
Yeah.
Minnesota Timberwolves. I played against him on Suffolk County. We were two of the top 100 players in Suffolk County in 1988 when we graduated. So I had sick hooping skills. Playing above the
That's
rim, I could dunk. I mean, I was good. Let's put
that's
it
a
that way.
that's a sweet name drop there, Tom Gugliotti. So then, I mean, you hear stories about people hooping in New York City growing up. I mean, what was that like? I mean, that's where you grew up. That's cool.
It was tremendous, man. I used to travel around the city, the five boroughs, and just play pickup games at different courts. And there's a lot of talent in that city that the
Right.
larger part of America will never see and never hear about, because kids that just they weren't really interested in going any further. They just had six skills playing in New York City, and that was it. But I ran across some people that just they would make some current and former NBA players look silly if they went out to those courts and tried to play against them. So I mean, it was awesome, but you had to be really careful and not go into the wrong neighborhood and try to
Yeah.
get into a pickup game, because it could
Yeah.
it could turn out worse than you wanted it to turn out. Let's put it that way.
Right. Right. What about music? I mean, there was a lot of cool things going on in music in New York City around that time. Were you into hip hop as it was kind of evolving around that
Big,
period of time?
big time, man. And back then, hip hop was so small that you got to actually be really close to different hip hop artists. And I was actually friends with Malik, what people call him the 5 footer from Tribe Called Quest.
Oh yeah.
Nobody knows him as Malik. Everybody knows him as Fife Dog. But I knew him as Malik, and he used to come out to Long Island and hang out. And he used to rap in my buddy Lee Bostic's basement. Lee was a DJ, and Fife was in his basement all the time. We were 15, 16, and 17 years old when we were hanging out. And I
That's
remember telling
awesome.
a girlfriend about him. And we went to New York one summer, went downtown to Union Square, and he saw me first. And he came and spoke to me, and she was like, "Yo, you know Fife." I was like, I told you I grew up with him. What are you talking about? Like, yeah, these guys I see all the time, and huge. I'm still huge into hip hop.
Yeah. Yeah, no, me too. I mean, I love hip hop as well, and in fact, my wife was driving our daughter home from daycare the other day, and I think Notorious B.I.G. came on in the background, and so my daughter was just kind of, she was into it, and it made me proud dad just to hear that she was
You got
into it.
rhythm?
Yeah, she does. She can
Oh,
dance. She
okay.
appreciates it. Yeah,
All right,
yeah.
that's what I
That's
wanted
all.
to do.
That's awesome. That's crazy backstory. So then when did you mentioned a little bit about getting into golf kind of late in the game? Obviously you were doing some other stuff in the meantime. I mean, catch us up on what you were doing before you started caddying, and then when did you get into caddying?
Dude, my degree is in accounting, and when I graduated, I went to work for Honeywell in Minneapolis, and I was a corporate financial auditor. So that was the start of my career, and for 13 years, I did corporate financial operational audits, did some mergers and acquisition, did some project accounting, but everything was pretty much in that accounting realm. Worked for
Mm-hmm.
J&J doing marketing finance for like the big brands like Tylenol, St. Joe's aspirin. Uh, and I was the finance guy that worked with the media. So I worked with TV budgets and radio budgets and print budgets. And that was pretty exciting. But it got to the point, Rat, where I just didn't like what I was doing. I didn't like the corporate rat race. I didn't like the people. I started not liking the work. I mean, I was just kind of in the grind of doing something that I wasn't interested in doing. And as it went further, I just said, man, I have to do something else. I didn't know what it was I wanted to do, but I decided I wanted it to be in golf. I just didn't know what I wanted it to be in golf. And over time, I started to meet people. And here's what got me into golf. I was
Mm-hmm.
actually at a PricewaterhouseCoopers training session in Orlando at Hawks Landing, the World Marriott. And every day when we were finished, I would go out, hit balls on the range, and try to play a quick 9 holes before dinners. I met a guy that had a staff bag, an older black gentleman. And you've probably never heard of him. We played a few holes together. And I was like, damn, he's pretty good, man. And I was like, so are you a pro? And he was like, nah, but I try to do some nationwide tour qualifiers. And I was like, well, I'd like to try caddying. So, I mean, who usually caddies for you? He was like, buddies. And I was like, well, do you mind if I caddy for you in a qualifier like this year? And he was like, yeah. So we exchanged numbers. That was August of '06. In October, I flew out to the Mark Christopher Charity Classic in Rancho.
Rancho Guacamole.
Yes, I flew out there and I did the Monday for him, but
Who is this guy? You're gonna
his
drop his
name is
name?
Vern Burns.
Vern
VERN.
Burns.
Yeah, BURNS.
Okay.
So he hired me. I worked. I went out early. I walked the course Saturday. I walked the course Sunday. We threw up an 84 on Monday, so we weren't qualifying for that tournament. But I called my wife after the qualifier and I said, I think I know what I want to do next.
So
I
what
knew
is it that hooked you on it right away?
Rat, I was on the golf course from sun up to sundown doing the work on the course. And the only thing that chased me away was the sun went down.
Yeah.
Man, I was 100% comfortable being out on the grass all day. And I never looked at it as work while I was
Mm-hmm.
out there. I was trying to
Mm-hmm.
learn as much as I could from the time I got there till the time I left. And I just felt sort of a spiritual and emotional peace being on the golf course. And I
Yeah.
learned a lot from Vern that week. And I stayed in touch. I never caddied for Vern again. But I stayed in touch. And at that point is when I made the decision. All right, I think I want to take a go at caddying. And I wanted to caddy on tour. That was my
Yeah.
goal. I didn't want a club caddy.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm very similar. I mean, we were kind of around the same time. I don't think we met each other right away. At that year, I was caddying for John Merrick on the Corn Ferry Tour, and the next year he would be out on the PGA Tour. So we kind of just missed each other at the onset there. But I'm pretty darn sure I was at that same '06 Mark Christopher Charity Classic in
Oh,
Rancho Cucamonga.
you want to know what's real interesting? I don't tell the story a lot, but I tell it. The reason that I said, man, I'm going to give this a go. So we didn't qualify, but I was like, well, I'm out here all week. I'll go to the golf tournament. So I went out there on a Wednesday. I had no idea about the flow of golf, what was happening. I didn't know there were pro-ams. I had no idea what that meant. So I
Mm-hmm.
just showed up Wednesday, went, and I was like, all right, I don't know which way to go. So I just walked a particular way. And you remember Richard Johnson from
Yeah.
Wales? Not
Yeah,
Richard,
the
but
big, yeah,
yeah,
tall,
Big
tall
Richard.
Richard. Yeah, big
I
Richard.
came up on him, and he was in the pro am, and Mark Hamilton was caddying for Richard, and they saw me. I just started talking to him, and about half a hole in, Richard was like, "Yo, come on inside the ropes, man." I walked with them for 4 holes, with them and their pro am group, just talking to Richard. I told him what I wanted to do. And the crazy thing is, me and Richard had on the same exact shirt. Remember those white Nike shirts that had the gray stripes like here, and then the
Yep.
gray stripes went down? Me and Richard were wearing the same exact shirt. And at the end of 4 holes, I was like, "Yo, you got business to take care of. Let me go. And he was like, I want to tell you something." I was like, "What's that?" He said, "If you were in the parking lot at a nationwide tour event," he said, "I'd pick you up if you were looking for a bag."
Mm-hmm.
Like that was what I needed to be like,
Yeah, yeah.
oh shoot, I'm going in.
Yep, yep.
So
So then you were, I mean, pretty shortly thereafter, you were probably looping in your first tournament officially.
No, dude, we lived in the Philly area. I lived in Gilbertsville, Pennsylvania at the time. We had a house on a golf course, two corporate jobs, and a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old at home.
Okay.
And I didn't know anybody in golf. I knew nothing. So you remember that school, Professional Golfers Career College?
Yeah.
I went to Temecula to visit the campus. I was like, all right, if I'm going to go into golf, I have to have some golf knowledge. So maybe I'll go to this school so I can meet golfers and get a degree while I'm looking for something. So I applied and I got accepted by Thanksgiving. And I told my wife, I was like, yo, we're moving to Orlando next August so I can enroll in this school. She couldn't talk about it for like 3 months. She wouldn't even talk to me about it.
Right.
She just was like, huh? I was like, yeah, we're gonna move in August. We're gonna sell the house and take the kids to Florida. Like she kind of freaked out and got real silent. She wouldn't even talk to me about it for 3 months.
And you're calling me from Orlando today. I know that.
Yeah, I live in Orlando now, man. But yeah, I went to that school, Rat, and I didn't only stayed for a semester because I picked up Miguel Carvalho at the final stage of Q school in '07.
And down at Orange County.
Yeah, I was working at Orange County in the bag room, and I was going to school, and I was working at the Ritz. And Miguel came in looking for a local caddy, and the pro shop called me. It was like, "Yo, Reynolds, you still here?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm in the parking lot." They like, "Yo, hurry up, come up. There's a guy up here. He wants a caddy for the week." I was like, I talked to Miguel in Spanish a little bit. I knew a little bit of Spanish, enough to get around. And he was like, all right, you want to start today? I was like, well, I had a bag. You remember Swensu Han, Steve Han? He went to UNLV.
No, I don't know that one.
I was caddying for him in the practice rounds. And so I told Miguel, I can't do it today, but I can start tomorrow. And he was like, all right. And that was history, man. We missed the tour card by one, but he asked me to go out on a nationwide tour with him that year. And that was the start of it right there.
Where it really started. That's cool. Yeah. That's a great story. And I know you're caddying for Joseph now. I want to talk about him a little bit, but I know you've had some other bags along the way. You know, I guess give us a list of some other people that that you've caddied for. I mean, I know one in particular that comes to mind that kind of takes us down a whole nother route is Cheyenne Woods, but give me some other names that you've looped for over the years.
I'll try to remember them all, but my first PGA Tour bag was Marco Dawson.
Okay.
So I worked for Miguel for like 7 tournaments, and then I started working for Marco at John Deere in 2008. So it was my first year. My first PGA Tour event was the middle of that year, and then I worked for Marco for 2 years. But in that time, I worked for Marco. I worked for Daniel Chopra, believe it or not, at the '09 Pebble Beach. Dave Schultz. I worked for Park and McLaughlin. I had Steve LeBrun for 3 years.
Steve LeBrun, great player, yeah.
Yep. I worked for Nota Begay at the 2011 Canadian Open, which is where I first remember meeting Joseph. Joseph was a rookie that year, and the Stanford guys played a practice round together.
Interesting.
So then over those years, I've worked for Paul Stankowski. I worked for Skip Kendall. I can't even remember them all. Worked for Ryan Blum, Stegmeyer. So it's probably about 10 or more that I'm not going to remember at this moment.
I hear you. Well, so that's interesting. You mentioned the Stanford guys, and then you met Joseph there, in 2011. I guess let's talk about him a little bit. I mean, he has an interesting story in that was kind of his first year on tour. He came right out of the gates and had some nice finishes as well too. And then at some point, kind of he got injured, and he's kind of been scratching and clawing his way back.
Correct.
And I don't know when did you start up with him officially then?
Officially and unofficially, I actually worked for him once in 2012. Okay. So when he came back it was the nationwide tour at that time. It was even before it was web.com. Steve LeBrun, I was working for Steve full time, but Steve took a week off, and Joseph was like, hey, you busy? You want to work? I was like, yeah, let's work. And we actually had a good tournament. We finished T15 at that Southgate course in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And I remember him saying to me, yo, man, I don't want to steal you from Steve or anything like that. He said, but anytime you want, he was like, this bag is yours. And I was like, I appreciate that, man, but I pride myself in being loyal and giving my word. So I'm not going to leave Steve at this point in time. Hopefully we get a chance in the future. And yeah, he played, I believe, 12, 13, and somewhere around 14, he got hurt. And if I'm right, my years might be mixed up. For 14, 15, 16, 17, he was out for a better part of 4 years with his injury. But I stayed in touch with him all that time he was out. I just touched base to see how he was doing because I hadn't seen him. And I think he started making his comeback in 17 or 18. And then I believe his first full season might have been 18 or 19.
Mm-hmm.
And he was really close to his card in the regular season and in the playoffs 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
And we just happened to connect one week in 19. He called me and he was like, hey, man, I'm just letting you know I got me and my caddy split. Jeremy Young was working for him at the time. He said, Jeremy and I just split, wondering if you could recommend anybody or – so I was like, all right, let me look some stuff up. I said, but when do you want them to start? He was like, next week I can have my coach, but after that, I was like, well, I'm off next week. I said, I can do it while we look for somebody. He was like, come on, let's do it then. We led the tournament at TPC Wakefield after 18 holes and had another good tournament.
Yeah.
And he was like, yo, if you want to keep going, I said, well, I got Will Claxton. I'm going to finish the tour season with Will Claxton. So there's another name with Will Claxton. But if he doesn't make the playoffs, I'll come work for you starting in Portland. And that's what happened. Will didn't make the playoffs. I started with Joseph in Portland. Then we went to the playoffs, and he got his card in the 19 playoffs. So we did those. That's when it went to 3 tournaments that year. So we did Columbus, Boise, Evansville. And so that was the start.
Got it done. And then out onto the PGA Tour more full-time with him, which is great. And then I saw, last year was a big highlight. He finished he finished inside the top 150 there, I guess, for that 2021 season.
Correct.
And then you guys go to the Korn Ferry Tour finals and had a couple nice top 30s, top 20 kind of stuff to start it off. And then you rolled into Victoria National and he locked up his card. He got a W.
Got the W, man. That was his first W and my first W. I mean, it was exciting time. And all we were trying to do each week, Rat, was finish in the top 25 because that's how he got his card. We finished T23, T25, T27 the year before, and he finished 22nd on the list. So I was like, dude, in order to keep our card, we just got to have three solid weeks. We don't have to kill it. But yeah, he got that W, man. He was in a zone on that back nine, and he just kind of rolled. It was crazy. Yeah.
Well, a quick break here at the turn to tell you more about the Therabody Theragun. I got mine last summer. It's part of my daily routine, and my body has never felt better. I use it before and after caddying, playing golf, working out, or even relief from being hunched over chasing our 1-year-old. It's so easy to use that I like to use mine while I'm watching TV. And like a lot of you, I'm traveling again soon, so I've got the Theragun Mini ready to go. Pumped about that. It's a space saver in your luggage and the most popular one with caddies on tour, so I can't recommend it enough. All right, let's get back to the podcast. Well, I had a chance to get a W there with Seamus Power in 2016, so you and I have that in common, taking a flag down from Victoria. Now, I mean, that's one of the hardest finishing stretches in all of golf. I mean, you throw the last 5 holes at it, but for sure the last 3. I mean, that's a really awesome flag to have on your wall.
It most certainly is, man. And especially we were 3 down with 9 left and won by 4.
Wow.
So that was huge. He just had a huge back 9. He never got stressed. He never started pressing. We just kept going, and he putted really well on that back 9.
So I'll name drop another guy to you. I was at Riviera this last week, and I was walking off the putting green, and I saw Rosie.
Okay.
And you know Rosie at all?
Yeah, I do. Roosevelt Richardson.
Roosevelt Richardson. And he lives out there, and he was caddying for Robert Kraft from the Patriots that day, and I ran into him, but he was on the bag for a win there with Peter Tomasulo, probably in 2012 or something like that.
At Evansville?
At Evansville.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
And so Pete hits it in the fairway off the tee, and I don't know where they were in the tournament. This is the last hole, and he like chunks a 7-iron into the water. I mean, just kind of choking his guts out. And Roosevelt takes his hat off and throws it down in the fairway, and he's like, God damn, we're not gonna, and he's just trying to pump Pete up.
Yeah.
And Pete said, calm down, Rosie. And they got their shit together. and they ended up winning the golf tournament. But I ran into him last week, and so when I was kind of putting notes together, I was like, "There's,
that sounds like Rosie too, man."
right, right,
100%.
So I mean, you guys had a nice start to the West Coast. I saw 4 or 5 cuts made on the West Coast, and here you are, kind of getting ready to go to Florida next week. So that's cool.
Yeah. He said we didn't have a great fall, so getting a good start on the West Coast, I think, was really key for him to make those 4 to 5. We just now have to have more impactful weekends.
Gotcha.
And once he starts having more impactful weekends, you'll see just a different person. Right. You'll see his name up there a bit.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've been noticing his name up there, but and he's got a lot of tools. You know, I mean, he can hit it a long ways, and he's got experience too. So
yes,
be looking for you guys to make some noise in Florida here. So you did caddy for Cheyenne Woods at one point, though. Is that right?
Yes, I did. I started with her in 2012 when she first graduated from college, but just part-time because I wasn't ready to be on the ladies tour at that time. I was still full-time with Steve LeBron.
And she's Tiger's niece, is that right?
That is correct.
What's the relation there? I haven't been
so Earl Sr., Tiger's dad, had children before he married Tiger's mom and had Tiger. So her dad is Earl Jr.
Okay.
So that's the connection.
Interesting. And when you were working for her on the ladies tour, I mean, obviously, I mean, I'm sure she talks about Tiger. I mean, was there any nuggets that you picked up working for her, or things that she said, you know, hey, Tiger's taught me this or that? I mean, did you get a read on what their relationship was like, or how he influenced her golf game?
And to be really honest, I wanted to be one of the few people around her that did not talk about him.
Mm-hmm.
You can imagine every interview that she had, every time anybody talked to her, they wanted to know about her Uncle Tiger and their relationship. And I wanted to be one of the few people that never asked her about that. And I never did. So I never asked her questions about how connected they were or what she learned from him. I know they did have a relationship, but while I worked for her, I wanted that to be something that if anybody kept it mum, it was me. So I never wanted to ask her about that. I wanted her to just be Cheyenne Woods and sort of forge her own path into golf without having to live in his shadow. You know what I mean?
Sure. No, I respect that a lot.
They spent time together. She would spend time with him and Jupiter, go down to the house. So they did have a relationship. She knows the children. So I'm sure there definitely is something there. I just wanted to be that one person in her sphere that didn't ask her about it, if that makes any sense.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
Well, I've always wanted to caddy on the LPGA, at least even just for one event, and it's never happened. So you've had a chance to caddy on the LPGA, you've caddied on the PGA Tour, you've caddied on the Korn Ferry Tour. I guess, can you break down some differences of looping on those 3 different tours? I mean, as far as maybe the golf, just the vibe of being a caddy out there?
Yeah. Technically, I said this in my very first year caddying. You remember Dave Schultz, Hornfrog, TCU? Dave Schultz?
Yes.
Caddy for Dave in 2008, maybe a few tournaments after I got my first few PGA Tour starts, and Dave asked me, he was like, yo, Ren, like, you've been out on the tour now. What's the difference, man, between, the PGA Tour and here? And I said, be honest with you, Dave, the biggest difference between Korn Ferry guys and the PGA Tour guys is the PGA Tour guys get that ball up and down from everywhere. I said, you guys can hit the ball. You can hit it far. Your ball striking is excellent. I said, but out on that big tour, if those guys miss a shot, they get it up and down from wherever they're at. I said,
that's always impressed me too.
Yes, that's the biggest thing I saw, the difference between Korn Ferry and tour guys, is that the short game. Even Marco, who was a journeyman, didn't win on the PGA Tour. His short game was phenomenal. Mm-hmm. Like, we were getting some spots, and in my head, I'd be like, man, this is a bogey. And I'd be like, holy crap, we just hit it to a half a foot, and we're tapping in. Like, they just get it up and down. Yes. So from a technical standpoint, those 2 tours, I say it's inside of 100 yards, where the PGA Tour guys just lap the Korn Ferry guys without a problem. And I don't know if you would agree with that in your experience.
Yeah.
That's
I
major.
would agree with that.
Now,
And
in
then on the
terms,
yeah, go ahead.
no, in terms of the difference non-technical, I mean, the Corn Ferry, we're just trying to survive out
Right.
on the Corn Ferry versus a
As a
PGA Tour.
caddy, yeah,
And it's
yeah.
not someplace a caddy wants to be for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
From a non-golf perspective, you want to graduate and you want to get to the big tour uh, in that environment, and of course the financial benefits that come with that environment as well.
For sure.
So,
And we were talking earlier, and I mean you're a guy, you like to socialize, you get to know everybody and stuff. I mean, I guess just talk about that a little bit, the fraternal aspect of caddying, the social aspect of caddying, and what you've enjoyed about that over the years, that some of the different characters you've met and stuff like that.
you'll be really surprised to hear this, but although I do love socializing, once I leave the golf course, I'm a loner. Like you
Do
won't
your own thing.
ever, you will rarely see me like at a large gathering other than caddy
I saw you the
network
other week.
and different caddy environments. Like I like doing that, but other than that, I hit my hotel room. I might go work out. I'll go run errands, eat dinner. Uh,
Hmm.
but in terms of the camaraderie, it's getting way better for me. I'm sort of opening up a little bit more and allowing myself to let guys know me. In the beginning years, it was hard, man, because I saw some cutthroat tactics between caddies trying to get
Hmm.
jobs, and
Hmm.
and I was like, okay, I want to stay away from these guys if that's how they treat
Right.
their friends, man. I don't want any parts of that. But I love the fraternal connection that caddies have, and just the camaraderie when we're at the course, when we're at tournaments. Even caddies looking out for each other behind the scenes, which the public doesn't see.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think that's huge.
What's your favorite course on the PGA Tour to go to?
Pebble Beach.
Oh,
No,
really?
I don't even
Nice. You
need to
guys were
think
just
about
there
that.
too, huh?
Yeah, that's my. We hit my top two spots 2 weeks in a row. Pebble and Torrey are my favorite stops on the tour for the golf courses and for the non-golf views and activities.
Right. Okay.
Coastal guy,
Yeah.
love the
Yeah.
coast.
You love the coast. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
What about, I mean, we talked about this a little bit earlier when you first got hooked. You were saying, hey, I'm out walking this golf course. I could, I only went home because the sun set.
Yeah.
What's your favorite part of caddying?
My favorite part of caddying is the emotional connection that you can develop with a player, and having the ability to use that emotional connection to sort of, I won't say lead him or her around, but to have an influence when we're out on the golf course. And as you know, if your player doesn't trust you, your advice is trash. They're not going to listen to a lot of things you say.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, they may gloss over it, but my favorite part of caddying is at the end of the day, realizing that what I say or do or not say or not do can have a big impact on this player's life and his ability to play well in golf tournaments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And that's something that only we know, when we get done. And nobody's ever looking for credit on that stuff, but you kind of know that the things that you say, the seeds you plant, can be impactful.
Absolutely, man. And that's the biggest part of our job. When people ask me about numbers, and I'm like, dude, these golfers can get any average person of intelligence off the street, and they can
Mm-hmm.
walk from one sprinkler head to the golf ball and add and subtract. They can figure out the depth of the greens and tell a guy, you got 115 front, 135 hole. Like a 7-year old could do that if you give them enough time to figure it out. But it's the interpersonal contact that I think makes you and I and other caddies a good caddy or a not so good caddy. It's how you handle that
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
interpersonal contacts.
Who's a player or the player that you've been grouped with over the years that's impressed you the most?
From what perspective would you say? Golf game?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'll give you two. I'll say one, golf game, and then two, maybe someone that just kind of like, in terms of maybe hanging out with them, they kind of surprised you. Like, oh, that was a pleasant surprise, or the way they carried themselves.
Two veterans stand out in my mind as guys that I I really liked being paired with, and they said some things to me that I've never forgotten. Stuart Sink. was the first one. Uh, when I worked for Marco, and we played with Stuart Sink at TPC River Highlands, 2 days. Remember Frank? Frank was on the bag for Stewart
Oh yeah,
still back
Frank.
then. And at the end of 2 days, Stewart looked me right in my eye. He shook my hand and he said, "Hey, man, it was a pleasure being out here with you these 2 days." And he said, "You did a really good job, man. You're a good caddy." And I never forgot that because he didn't have to say that. He could have
Yeah.
just shook my hand and said, "Hey, good to be with you," and moved on. But he took the time to actually, and it felt empowering for a guy that had just been caddying for a year and a half. So it was, to me,
Mm-hmm.
it was like, yo, that was, that's Stuart Sink, man. This guy has won tournaments. And
Yes.
Jim Furyk is the other veteran that has the same temperament, same personality, and is very was very impactful with some things that he said to me in his demeanor. So those two guys stand out as two guys that I would love to be paired with at any point in time because of their character and how they carry themselves.
Yeah, and you referenced two, all-time really good caddies there that kind of did it different way. I mean, Frank's a jock and just really did really awesome with Stewart over the years, and then obviously you're out there with Fluff as well. An absolute legend.
Yeah. Now, as far as the golfers were concerned, it was very recently in Minnesota this summer that so it's two guys. I'm going to group them in the same category. We played with Patrick Reed on Saturday, and then we played with Sergio on Sunday. So we got paired on the weekend with two Masters champs, and I
Uh-huh.
was impressed with both of them. Joseph was longer than those guys. Joseph struck the ball just as well as those guys. Uh, but when they had bad holes or bad moments, you could tell they were never shook in the moment. They were
Mm-hmm.
steady. They went about taking the golf course and their round apart uh, with a steadiness that I think a lot of younger players can learn from. They got the job
Yeah.
done when the job needed to get done, and that
Yeah.
was most impressive to me. That they just got the job done in a quiet way. Like we looked up and Sergio shot like 7 or 8 under on Sunday and went from wherever we all were to like top seven.
Yeah.
And it was like,
Yeah, I've
what happened?
I've been impressed. Yeah, I've been impressed by that out of Sergio before. His ability to kind of get his tunnel vision when it's his turn, to play, but then also he's got some antics after shots that are like, but he gets over them and moves on, and he puts his score. He'll have some holes where he'll be like, "Man, you're Sergio Garcia. What are you doing? Messing around like that." But then you look up at the end of the day, and a lot of times he's in the red somehow.
He shot a 64, and you're like, oh man, I
Yeah,
didn't see that. I missed 4 of those
yeah,
shots. Like, where did 4 of
yeah,
those shots? But yeah, those
yeah.
are two guys that were impressive on the golf course, and not just because of their golf game, but because of how they took apart the round and the course and just kept
Hmm.
themselves composed.
Yeah. Well, I've really been impressed hearing your story, Reynolds. I guess one question I have is just talk to me about the pride of being an African American caddy. I mean, I don't know if that's something that you're comfortable answering or stuff, but I mean, historically speaking, African Americans have had a huge part in the game, and especially as caddies, and you're one of the ones out there right now that are kind of carrying that torch. I guess is that something that you take pride in?
I do take pride in it, but it's not something that's on the brain and at the forefront of my mind all the time. First and foremost, I consider myself a professional caddy,
Hmm.
regardless of my race. And the first job I need to do out there is represent Joseph Bramlett to the best of my ability and myself to the best of my ability, so that when people look at me, they see a professional and they see a man out there about his job.
Yep.
And I won't lie, people notice. I get African American patrons and people coming up to me all the time, like, "Yo, it's good to see you, brother, man. It's good to see you out here. Like,
Yeah.
keep doing it, man. We're watching, we're rooting for you." So there's a tremendous amount of pride being out there, and the best way I can carry the torch is to just keep being a professional
Yeah.
and not let my race get ahead of my professionalism, if that
Hmm.
makes any sense.
Absolutely. That's a great answer.
Yeah, and
That's
I
a
know
great
some of the
answer.
older school caddies. Like I've roomed
Yeah.
with Tommy Bennett,
Yep.
hung out with Clifford Moore.
Yep.
Barry Barnes, Rosie. Like
Yep.
I did not have the privilege of meeting some of the front runners like Rabbit and Gino and some of the that caddied at
Yep.
Augusta, other than
Carl
Carl
Jackson.
Jackson. No, I met
You've
Carl.
met Carl.
Yeah,
I've met Carl once too.
yeah,
What a great man.
very much so, man. He's just a gentleman, a professional, and a very polished uh, human being.
Yeah.
And he gave me some encouragement very early on as well. So in everything I do, I try to represent Joseph, then myself, professional caddies, and then absolutely the
Yeah.
pride of being one of the few African American caddies out there makes me want to be that more professional and that more or that much better in what I do.
Right. That makes a lot of sense, Reynolds. I like that answer.
Good.
So we're West Coast. You just wrapped it up. We're heading to the Florida swing, baby. I mean, let's get into Florida just a little bit. You live down there. Talk
So
about the difference. Like, Florida golf, man. It's a different brand.
yes, we're unfortunately we're going to skip the first one. So Joseph hasn't had.
Oh, you guys you going to Puerto Rico now?
Yeah, yeah. He asked for my
All right.
opinion, and I wanted him to play Honda. I said, "Yo, let's play Honda and let's skip Puerto Rico." But this will be his first year playing the Players, so he really wanted 2 weeks off so he can rest, and he wants to be at his peak for the Players Championship when we go there in a few weeks.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
Well,
think. Oh, go ahead.
Well, we were talking about that I guess on the phone the other night, and you were saying, hey, we got, because, I don't think people appreciate that with the scheduling on tour. I mean, you've got a full card and, you're in new things that you haven't played before, and you have to take weeks off, and it's tough. And I saw both sides of the coin on that. When you think about going to Puerto Rico, yeah, you're playing for half the points. But again, also, those are some of the fields where you can really, make your mark and go out and get that first win, if you're looking at it through Joseph's eyes.
And that's almost exactly what he said, Rat. He was like, we were in the hunt the last 2 years at Barracuda, and last year we were in the hunt at Barbasol when Seamus won. We finished like T11, but T11 was 3 shots off of the win. So it was just bunched up at the top of the leaderboard, and we had a chance coming down the back nine to post a number and challenge for that win. And we had our first top 10 together in Puerto Rico 2 years ago.
Oh, there you
So
go.
he feels like a good amount of rest and then a start in Puerto Rico would get him. He said, I feel like I'm really close to winning one of these opposite field events. So
Yeah.
I like
Cool.
the confidence he has there. But yeah,
Yeah.
definitely looking forward to the Florida golf. To answer your question, I think it's a total different beast from the West Coast. You got different greens. So I guess you can say Poe is kind of close to Bermuda, but that Bermuda rough is not something that non-Florida or East Coast golfers have an easy time getting used to. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
always interesting to watch guys in Florida because you'll see some terrific players struggle
Yeah.
in Florida because
I mean, you got to get your flyer game right, and
yeah,
then it's a total switch up on the greens as well.
yeah,
And you're right. And there's some guys that really dominate on the West Coast, and they get over to Florida and like might as well skip it. And then there's some guys that have been kind of in hiding the whole time, and then they show up in that Bermuda grass, and they get so comfy on it.
yeah. They show their stuff, man. So, but as far as
What's
terrain changes, it's flat.
Yeah.
No
Yeah, it's
hills in
flat.
Florida. So
Bunkers, more water, more gators.
exactly, we'll be all right.
Yeah, you'll be all right. But so you're not going to play the Honda, but I guess just because this will be kind of dropping that week. What have your experiences been out at that golf course? I mean, it's a caddy nightmare in a lot of respects.
Yeah, I've had 2 experiences there. The first one was actually Q School with Steve LeBrun, and we actually got it done to get him his web.com card one year playing at the there was 2 courses, the Fazio and then the
Yep.
Champions course that they play, and he got it done that last day. I mean, Steve kind of went on a run in our last 9 holes to get in like one above the number. So it was kind of cool to see that. But he's a Florida boy. He's a West Palm boy, so he loves those Bermuda greens. But you could see how the bear trap and that Champions course it decimated some guys on that final day trying to get their card. And
what a brutal place to try to get your card.
man, and I'll be honest, last year, Joseph, it kind of hurt us too, man. We were -4 Thursday in 4th place, and then we missed the cut. So
it can happen there.
We
It's one
got
place where it
beat
can
up
happen.
by that course on Friday like nobody's business, man. And it happened so fast. That's the thing about that course. You don't have to be doing anything wrong. You just have to maybe hit one or two offline, and you're toast. Yeah, all of a sudden.
You can string.
What happened?
Yeah.
What happened? I was 4 under. Now I'm like 6 over. I don't even know what happened or where that came from. So that course, it keeps your attention from the first tee until you putt the last ball on 18. You cannot get distracted on that golf course.
Yeah. So we'll see you guys at in Puerto Rico, and then what else all the way up, through the Players? What's your schedule?
Well, Puerto Rico is the week before the Players. So
okay. So Puerto Rico,
Players,
the Players,
and we'll play Valspar, then we'll play Punta Cana, and so we'll play pretty much everything in Florida except for Honda, and then we'll go to Punta Cana and Valero, and then we'll see from there. So hopefully we knock on the door a couple times and get ourselves into a different category for the season.
Absolutely, man. Well, hey, I appreciate you taking some time out of your day to join us and tell us some of your stories. And
pleasure, man.
It was really great, man. Reynolds, that was awesome getting to chat with you a little bit more.
Let's make sure we don't make it the last time. It doesn't have to be on camera, but you know where I'm at.
It won't be.
All right.
I won't be. Yeah. All right. Thanks, buddy.
All right. Take care, man.
Just a reminder that this Under the Strap podcast is presented by the Therabody Theragun. We'll be back soon with another podcast, so please subscribe. And in the meantime, make sure to follow the Caddy Network on all your social media channels. I'm host John Rathouz. Thank you for listening.